Welcome to the Arcade Era Power Hour, a podcast where we talk about things, brain work.
A podcast where we talk about Donkey Kong, the arcade game, and games that spun off from that, including old Mario games and other things.
And I am Gibbon, and this is my wonderful co-host Milo, who stops me from looking too idiotic.
I'll let you go on a little bit, and then I'll pull it back.
I said too idiotic, not idiotic at all.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Actually feeling pretty refreshed for once. Probably because I skipped out on work early and took a nap.
Oh,
so
sounds good.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, I had the day off today because of reasons.
Yeah, it
So
wasn't
nice.
like completely unwarranted. A lot of my coworkers were out with like the plague or whatever, so I just took the opportunity to take off an hour or so early. But yeah.
Yes. So this episode today, we're going to be talking about comics that relate to our chosen games of interest. Specifically because there's a ton of material that gets made and released in Japan. This episode is going to be about Western-produced comics and publications.
Yeah.
But
And
before we get to the main topic, there's a bit of news and follow-up. So
Yeah. Following up from last week, one costume we failed to mention in Super Mario Odyssey is the clown costume. And while that the connection there to the arcade sphere of influence might not be immediately apparent, a friend of mine and I, Tony Duck, Tony Bean, whatever his Sona is today.
Friend of the show.
Was looking through old box arts for ports of Donkey Kong, the original game.
Oh, there are so many ports.
There are so many of them, and the box arts are just amazing. They're pretty great seeing the spread of artistic talent on display there. But one that stands out a lot is the Atari 2600 box art, or one of the box arts. They fixed it in later versions, but it depicts Mario as this clown with a hammer climbing a ladder, battling some weird little horned gremlin monster things.
Yeah, they're like blob unicorn.
Yeah, they got
goblins.
little mohawks and horns and spiky piranha teeth. I don't know. The point is,
They obviously don't appear in the game itself.
Yeah, as it turns out, there's a reason for that, and it's that this box art has nothing to do with Donkey Kong and is actually box art for a port of Mr. Doe's Castle, another arcade game, and the second arcade game in the Mr. Doe arcade game series. There's like 5 or 6 of them. Read up on it a little bit. It's fascinating. But anyway, yeah, it stars Mr. Doe, this little clown who's got a hammer, and he climbs up ladders, and you can shift the ladders around to divert these little enemy guys, and the objective is to defeat all of them either by bopping levels of the floor above them down on them, or caving out the floor from underneath them if they're on the same level as you. And then you progress to the next round, which has a different map configuration. It's a bit like Wrecking Crew, really.
And I can see why they got confused, because it's about a guy with a hammer climbing ladders.
Yeah.
And back then, the in-game graphics for those games were very simplistic. So Mario could be a clown, maybe.
Especially on ports like the Atari or the Commodore, where the graphics are just like, here you have 16 pixels to display, sort of thing. It's like this arbitrary blob has to be a gorilla. Get to it.
Exactly. The green square monkey, and you have to fight against the red squares. That's a goof from the Grand Theft Auto Vice City radio show. Anyway,
we thought it was sort of a nice, if accidental, callback to that.
Oh yeah, it's
clown
absolutely
outfit.
an intentional reference.
Yeah.
Because Mario Odyssey, with all its many references to old Mario stuff, I think you can say it exclusively pulls from obscure Japanese stuff and nothing that originated in international markets.
Pretty much.
Which is why everyone who was hoping for a Mario Brothers the movie, live-action movie, Bob Hoskins outfit was always going to be disappointed.
I always kind of figured the nod there, if anything, would be the hidden a T-Rex chases you little mini game for a moon in the middle of New Donk City.
That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, that was one of the moons. You have to
that's a real thing?
Get on a scooter and run away from a tyrannosaur in the...
Oh, okay, sure, yeah, that's a reference.
It's chasing you down an alley.
I'm not convinced.
Also, the initial Cappy sequence where you first cap a frog goes through this wonderfully psychedelic, like Mario falling through eternity sequence that's very reminiscent of the Mario crossing the dimensional barrier sequence in the film.
The initial,
but it itself is very reminiscent of like the same sort of transition in Tron, which itself is reminiscent of, it's a trope, it's a thing. So,
and it's like the time travel sequence in Star Trek 4 The Voyage Home.
Yeah, exactly. It's
yes, okay, cool. So my other item of follow-up was, while I was editing the last episode, I realized that I made the contention that the DK Gerda official policy is that the current Donkey Kong is the same person as DK Jr. but grown up. I realized that my wording could make it seem like there was some debate on that issue, but I want to state that if you really look at the evidence, it's completely self-evident that this is the fact, and I don't know why there's any discussion about it.
Yeah, pretty much the only contention at all is whether Donkey Kong Sr. is father or grandfather to Donkey Kong Jr. And people seem to misconstrue this as like, oh, does that mean modern DK is not Donkey Kong Jr.? No. It just means there might be a generational gap in the middle there. That's all that means.
Yeah. And I just wasn't forceful enough about it. So anyway, that's that. But that actually leads into our item of news for this week, because it's not something that really happened, but it's something that came up that I personally didn't know about yet.
Who brought this to our attention?
Now you've put me on the spot.
Yeah, I know, right? Which chat was this in?
It's not too far back. It was in the Outer Circle.
Yeah, but which Outer Circle chat? Because I know
Donkey Kong Island. Nope, wasn't there. General talking. This is this free to anyone to join?
Yeah, it was Tony again.
Yeah, it was Tony. Well, excellent. Yeah, Tony posting a tweet from the Super Mario Fact, the Twitter profile, which posts random facts from the Mario Wiki. And it's a picture of a gorilla, and the text of the tweet is, Uncle Julius is a character from the Saturday Supercade episode Gorilla Ghost. He is Donkey Kong Jr.'s literal uncle who lives in a city zoo.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So Cranky has a brother.
Yes. Cranky has a brother. And whether this has any relation to Pink Donkey Kong Jr. or Swanky Kong or anything remains to be seen.
Yep.
But I mean, we've talked about the Saturday Supercade before, definitely during the Stanley episode. And it's something we're going to get to on a future podcast in more depth. But as we haven't done that depth research on it yet, this was surprising to us that there's a new Kong character in the show, of course.
Or I guess an old Kong character we weren't aware of. So
well, yeah. New to the show, new to the canon.
Man, this reminds me of when DK Vine discovered that the Donkey Kong cartoon continued in France for like another 3 seasons as a variety act show with Donkey Kong and friends as the hosts.
Yes, I'm the one who brought it up on the forum twice. And even the second time I did it, everyone was shocked and surprised to see this stuff.
Man,
I'm like, people.
That happens all the time. Oh my god, just the other day someone brought up the revolutionary theory that, hey, maybe the Donkey Kong Country games like take place after the Mario games in like the future of the world by like half a generation or so, and everyone's like, "Oh man, that works." And I'm like, "I posted this exact same topic like 8 years ago, and everyone told me to shut the fuck up and get out of here."
Well, to be fair, 8 years is a long time.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So yes, that was our fun revelation for the week. But anyway,
Yeah.
having covered that, I think we can get into the topic.
Yeah. So today's topic is that while there are numerous and myriad Donkey Kong related comics and publications and stuff, there's a surprisingly decent number of them that originated in the West. And they've got some really interesting stuff going on. So we will be kind of spitballing and summarizing the Western Donkey Kong comics. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've put these in general order of relevance, I guess. It's kind of, you know, here and there, but
yeah.
So the first item is Blip magazine, which is a comic. So Blip magazine, or to give it its full title, Blip the Video Games Magazine, was one of Marvel Comics' many like side ventures, and it didn't last very long. It only had 7 issues.
Was this one of Marvel UK's imprints, or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were 7 issues between February and August of 1983.
Okay.
I'm trying to look up now if it was Marvel UK, but never mind.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because the names that I looked up later are sort of from the American scene, I believe.
Cool.
Anyway. Yeah, so the comic went for 7 issues. Some of them had comics in them. The one that we're most interested in was in the first issue. There was a sort of adaptation of Donkey Kong, the game. After that, they never really tried that kind of thing again. There were Spider-Man comics and Hulk comics, and like just simple gag strips that were really lame. But yeah, the Donkey Kong one, it's 6 pages long.
It's got some actually decent art from what I remember.
Yeah. The art was done by a guy called Bob Camp, who worked on things like Conan the Barbarian and G.I. Joe.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's
Yes.
definitely Mario by way of Conan, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's an interesting depiction. He's got a really big nose and a really big mustache, so the important features are there.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a short guy, which is the way he was portrayed.
I don't know. Like, in really early stuff, like cab art and the like sticker books and stuff you can get, he almost looks like a wholesome Waluigi.
Oh, the lanky one. The
Yeah.
one that's bald.
The one that's bald and has sort of the curly villain mustache and just has the really long, these legs were made for walk-in legs.
But then there's things like the Mario Brothers art where it's beyond chibi. They're like crushed and they have basically no legs.
Yeah.
And I know the coloring book later on describes Mario as Little Mario.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I guess it varies depending on your medium. But anyway, I mentioned the artist. The writer was Steve Grant, who also got a lot of work from both Marvel and DC, and even Dark Horse and Wildstorm. I didn't note any individual titles he wrote on because there were just too many in the list.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's one of the big names of the comics industry back then. So what is the comic exactly? Well, it's not just like a straight story of the game. It's this really sort of weird setup where it's presented like a TV show documentary or something, where this presenter called Vic Video is being filmed, and each panel is sort of framed as a shot from the camera, although sometimes you see the camera crew in the background as well. It varies. but he's kind of interviewing Mario about his experiences as being like a hero or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of like behind the music type setups.
Yeah, that's right. Fourth wall breaking, etc. There's one line, especially later on, where Vic's asking Mario how it all got started, and Mario goes, "Well, it was back in Japan," and Vic says, "Donkey Kong started there. Is that where you and he first met?" And that's kind of fourth wall breaking meta stuff. But then the next line is, "Did he climb up beams with damsels there too?" "Yeah, he did. It was during an experiment to breed a gorilla who could do construction work."
Which is insane.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest lore drop of the whole comic. Like, what does that mean?
It as I was saying while we were doing research for this, it reminds me a lot of the plot of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which was the fourth of the original run of Planet of the Apes films, which they've already done the whole gone back in time and done the causal loop that starts the whole Planet of the Apes nonsense in the first place thing, and this is the film that shows you the progression, and the first part of the film has sort of quick cuts as they start training up the monkeys and gorillas and stuff to do manual labor and things. So you've got these like scenes of basically like gorillas in like prison jumpsuits in labor camps being like just sort of, you know, angry human guards with batons like, pick up that thing, go do this task, sort of thing. And that's what comes to mind when I read the line, yeah, experiments for gorillas for construction work.
So that's possible backstory for where DK actually came from.
Actually, when did that film come out? That was 1972. So
yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, I was just, when did the comic come out versus when did the film come out? Wondering if that was recent and maybe in people's minds. But
well, it was a big cultural thing even after
that's
the movie
true.
series finished.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else can we learn from this? Okay, well, I guess I said there's sort of the documentary style, but it quickly devolves as the interview itself is interrupted by Donkey Kong coming back, and they kind of reenact the events of the game organically. Like, Donkey Kong's come in and he takes Pauline again. And yeah, like over the course of the comic itself, this happens a couple of times, and at one point Vic Video gets kidnapped and Mario has to rescue him. So he rescues Pauline twice, Vic once, but by the end everyone's friends because it's revealed that at one point Mario says that the reason he's taking damsels generally is that because they remind him of the mother he never knew, which sort of plays into him being a lab experiment. And then Pauline at one point scratches him behind the ears at the behest of Mario, who says that's all he really wants is just a good scratch behind the ears. And then they all just it ends with Mario and Pauline sleeping in DK's arms, and they all have a big old hug. It's very cute.
Yeah, it's a nice little comic. I'm still trying to figure out how the gorilla experiments play into everything else we've seen. Yeah, that's weird.
There's other kind of oddnesses about it. At one point, Mario, like Vic asks him about Pauline, and Mario says he doesn't even know her, whereas other sources would indicate that they did have a pre-existing relationship.
Yeah.
What else?
We'll get to some of those sources later.
Yes.
Well, it's possible. Great. It's possible he didn't know her before this incident, but
I like to think that he did.
Yeah, like even the. We'll talk about like the activity books a little later, but even they
that's
like they didn't know each other personally, but he knew of her because she was like a frequent patron of the zoo sort of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, even if they hadn't been acquainted, then like they were both in the same place.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if that sort of idea is backed up by the Casey Mario comics, but I guess that'll be a future episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, a couple of other takeaways from it. Vic asks about Donkey Kong's name, and Mario's contention is that it just means that he isn't very bright. Like, he's wondering about why it's Donkey. Like, that's a lot of people, I'm sure, wondered. I think the actual story is that it was a name given by Miyamoto, Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of the characters.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to just indicate stubbornness.
Yeah, I think it's
just
one of those. This
And
happens
like,
a lot in older translated media where you get sort of this thing that's almost translated correctly. You know?
Well, yeah, I've seen some sources say that it's straight up a mistranslation or a bad dictionary or something.
Yeah, like one of my favorite manga authors, Tsutomu Nihei, his premier breakout work is Blame with a big exclamation point. It was supposed to be blam, the sound a gun makes, and he just yeah.
Okay. Well, like what I think about it is that it's meant to be an evocative name, and
yeah, it rolls off the tongue.
To conjure up images of a stubborn animal, and like DK isn't evil. He's just strong-willed.
He's just an asshole.
Yep, basically.
Yep.
And let's see. Oh, yes. I guess we'll leave off on this. At one point, Vic is falling from the scaffolding. Mario jumps out to catch him and then somehow falls back in on a lower level of the construction site. And Vic says, would you mind telling us how you did that? And Mario says, you just have to believe in yourself, that's all. Just believe in yourself. Simple wisdom from an uncomplicated man. No wonder he's such a great American.
I wonder if that's a call out to wall jumping in the arcade game.
Was that well known? That's not an intended technique?
No, it's not an intended technique. The way it works, it was known enough amongst people who played the game a lot, and it's when you jump off of a thing, if you hit one of the boundaries at the edge of the screen, you'll just rebound right back, and it's a way of sort of jumping not over barrels but avoiding barrels that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to avoid.
Well, I didn't know about that, and I just thought it was a fun gag, but you never know, it could be a reference to that.
Yeah, it's jumping out and you get shunted right back. So I don't know. Also, props. Mario's been able to wall jump since 1981.
Yeah, so that was Blip, at least the first comic. There was one little footnote to that, is that issue 2 featured an advertisement for a Donkey Kong toy that was being flogged at the time. I've seen pictures of this toy. It's really fuzzy, and it's got a barrel printed on the chest.
Oh.
Do you know this one?
Yeah. I think Julius actually has one of those.
I think he does, yeah. I think I've seen his photos of it. And it has no neck. It's really
so
weird.
Jealous.
Yeah, so this is... when Donkey Kong Mania was big, like they were making toys and stuff. But yeah, in issue 2, there's a half-page ad for this toy. And it takes the form of like a comic panel, basically. So that's why I sort of included it as a comic. And Mario is climbing up a ladder, and the toy Donkey Kong is there throwing a barrel at him. And Mario's saying, "It's my arch enemy Donkey Kong. And look, now he's more than my insidious video foe. Now he's a real-life stuffed plush superstar. Nothing can stop him now."
I need one of these. If you
go.
hear me typing, I'm on eBay.
And as a footnote to the footnote, issue 3 has an illustration which imagines American Gothic, the painting by Grant Wood, redone in a Mario or a Donkey Kong theme. And that art was done by Michael Carlin.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, I will be putting pictures on the video for this podcast. So if you're just listening and not looking at the screen, like, glance at it every now and then. There'll be images from the comics that we discussed coming up there, because I realized that podcasts are an audio medium, comics are a very visual medium. That doesn't really mesh too well, but I'll be putting some pictures on there for you to see.
Oh God,
And
there's a miniature
yourself.
one of those plushes still in its packaging on eBay for over $200.
Good grief.
Yeah, I think I'll hold off on that.
Okay, and with that, let's move on to number 2 on our list.
Yeah.
The activity and coloring books.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I'm
this is
actually
pretty
able to
fascinating
contribute
stuff.
to some of this conversation.
Oh,
Yeah,
do you
these
wanna
are
kick it off?
great. There was straight up coloring books, there were activity books, and then there was it sticker books? There was 3 different types of books, and there was a couple different versions for each type. So you actually end up with like 6 or so books across Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., and they're all just labeled like Donkey Kong activity book or Donkey Kong coloring book. Even the ones
Yeah, it
that's
makes
like
it hard to find.
yeah, so like even like both of the coloring books will be labeled just coloring book, and the cover the cover art will be different. That's how you tell them apart, sort of thing.
Yeah.
2 of them, one is just I'd say retelling of the story of Donkey Kong, but it might have been like the first telling we had in the States. And it goes through sort of like Mario was an all-purpose handyman at this boardwalk / zoo, and Pauline was a frequent patron, and DK was one of the animals there. And one day he broke out and kidnapped Pauline, and Mario went after him, and you know the rest of the story, sort of thing. And one of the Donkey Kong Jr. books similarly has the story of Donkey Kong Jr., where it's like, oh, Donkey, like after that, Mario had Donkey Kong, and Jr. went to get his papa back, yada, yada, yada. But they've also got ones like, there's one where Donkey Kong has broken loose and is running wild, and Mario doesn't know what to do about him, so he goes and gets Pauline from her nightclub where she and her band play, because he knows that Pauline's the only one who can calm DK down, sort of thing. And yeah, like, so there's Pauline, you know, having a little jazz band back in, you know, 1982 or through whatever it was.
No fooling. Like, stuff in here. Odyssey is not the first time that Pauline's been in that role. And I'll correct you there a little bit, because this is one of my favorite things about the book, is the backstory that it gives to the characters. Pauline isn't just a patron of this park, this amusement park or whatever it is that Mario works at. She's like a fellow employee. She does shows there. They have like a stage in amphitheater where she sings and acts and performs. She's shown doing a clown act, hitting a clown in the face with a pie. You'll have to forgive me.
It's really hard to find full scans of these books, and they're expensive and hard to track down. So and our information on them is not complete. Like I don't know how many parts, like how many individual coloring books there are in this first series. So in 1982, you can see that the title of them is Donkey Kong Coloring and Activity Book. Like Gibbon said, there's the coloring book, there's the activity book, and then there's the coloring and activity book. There's, like I said, it gets confusing.
I think the thing is that you have coloring and activity books, and then you have activity books, and I think that's the divide. So there's a series of them that are labeled Donkey Kong Coloring and Activity Book. I don't know how many there are, but one of them deals with this backstory where they're in the amusement park. Mario's repairing rides, and Pauline is a singer in the park, and she's feeding animals, and then DK grabs her. Another part of it features a shrink ray where, like, people
Oh God, I forgot
get
about the shrink ray
get
one.
shrunk down and literally go inside an arcade machine, and then they're looking out through the screen and looking at big circuit boards and stuff, but then they're actually interacting with the Donkey Kong game. It's like this weird thing. Like Tron, but more
That's another
physical,
thing
you
that
know?
happened in old media a lot is the
yes.
games of things would show up in the things themselves. Like in
Yeah.
Tremors 2, the guy
Okay.
is living out in the middle of nowhere, and he's got a copy of the Tremors arcade machine. And like one of the people
Okay.
is like, "Oh man, I bet you made a fortune off of this." And he's like, "They didn't ask me before they made this. I didn't see a dime." Like, it's just one of those like using the merchandising in the media sort of thing.
And yeah, we have like pictures of a few pages from that book, and almost the full scan of the first book, I think. But then there's another book which is centered around the haunted house attraction in this theme park thing, or amusement park. Tony will probably pull me up on that.
Yeah, he was going off on that earlier.
Amusement parks versus theme parks. Anyway, yeah, there's all this like horror movie imagery in this other one, and so there's each one has its own theme and stuff, and you have a coloring book section, which is kind of a story that is told out through a picture and then a caption, and that's why I sort of consider it a comic. Because it's sequential art that's telling a story in a way. And then there's the activity section at the back with puzzles and mazes and things like that.
Even the
later
DK94
the
guide
later books,
was like
yeah,
that.
the later books that are just activity books don't have that coloring section, so I'm less interested in them because they're not telling a story in that way. And some of these stories, like I said, do fill out the backstory of the characters, so that's why I really like them.
Yeah, I wonder if the DK94 guide was a direct callback to those sorts of things, because in between the guide sections, it's got like little mazes and activities and stuff to do, and then it's got the
that's
comic
really
at the
fun.
back.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll cover that on a future episode. That's a good comic. Anyway, so that was 1982. You had a series of Donkey Kong coloring and activity books, written by Dean Laurie, Fran Rizzo, James Sherman, illustrated by James Sherman and Joanne Marshall. I researched those names, so
There were
figured I'd
Donkey
say
Kong
them.
Jr. ones as well. So
Yeah. Okay. So the thing about the Donkey Kong Jr. ones, as far as I can tell, there was no coloring book about them. So none of them are going to be telling a story. They're just there's one called Donkey Kong Jr. Activity Book, and there's one called Donkey Kong Jr. Puzzles and Mazes.
Okay.
The other one that I'm most interested in was you'll see some covers that say Donkey Kong Strikes Again. Now this is what you were talking about, where Pauline's a club singer. This is another coloring book, activity book in 4 parts that tells a story. Now there was an accompanying volume that was just an activity book that says Donkey Kong Strikes Again. So this is the thing, there's going to be 5 Donkey Kong Strikes Again book covers that you might see looking through, pictures on the web, on eBay and stuff. But yeah, the 4 of them that have the coloring section tell this story that Gibbon was talking about. That's kind of a sequel to the game, where Donkey Kong is back and at it again, going mad on the construction site, and Mario goes out and seeks out Pauline, who is now in a different career, because he knows that she can calm DK down, and recruits her, and they team up. And yeah, this is where you find out how Pauline has her own club. It's called Pauline's. She owns it, and she's the star singer in there. So she's really doing well for herself, and that's one of the really fun things about this.
I
Donkey
love
Kong
how well
Strikes
that
Again
all
book.
dovetails with Odyssey.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what makes it really feel authentic and fun.
Yeah.
Is that these themes were taken up later on. I mean, I'm sure the people who developed Odyssey had absolutely zero idea that this thing existed.
I know, right?
But
well, I don't know. It was one of the
it's
newer
good.
teams at Nintendo. They also did 3D World as sort of I've read that 3D World was sort of a test run to see how well they could make a Mario game on an existing engine without direct oversight from Miyamoto, and then Odyssey was them like basically like, well, okay, yeah, you can do it. Now go do another one. Have fun, sort of thing.
And they sure did.
So I kind of feel like, given all they crammed in there, like some of the deep pulls they made with costumes and stuff, that they might have been aware of some of this stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about that. Like I said before, like this was produced in America. It's quite obscure. 1982 and 1983.
That's fair, but
I guess they would have had to ask Nintendo about it for licensing and stuff. But it probably would have all been done through the NOA branch.
They did apparently have to ask about some things. Like, they wanted to have, like, a direct Donkey Kong appearance, but it got vetoed. But they still got permission to have the arcade DK in the retro segments. So, yeah. Still hoping for that DLC. Anyway.
Oh, and Donkey Kong Strikes Again as a unit was written and illustrated by David Morris. That's a different creative team from the earlier coloring books. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to mention while we're on coloring books is that Super Mario Brothers the movie, which we love, and we're all about that movie.
We are.
Here at DK Goethe. That had a coloring book with it as well. As
yeah, we briefly talked about that last time in regards to the redraw.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Checo Mall was redrawing the whole thing with a game-accurate art style kind of thing. But, yeah, I bring it up here because it features elements that are relevant to us, especially Daniela, who is a.k.a. Pauline. She appears in one page during the mattress escape scene down the frozen pipe. She's holding onto Mario's right arm, and her puffy sleeve
is not drawn well.
Thing, it's rendered creatively with some kind of sci-fi ring.
A very generous way of putting it. So.
Yeah.
She's there.
She's there. What else about the movie makes it a DK Goethe interested?
Well, there's the Pauline aspect. There's the fact that it's just generally meant as a prequel to, or prequel/backstory to Mario and Co., which is kind of why we also care about like Yoshi's Island. Primarily Yoshi's Island DS, but the Yoshi's Island era in general, and it's sort of this is what happened before, sort of.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day. Like, the film is the story of how the Mario Brothers became the Super Mario Brothers, and DK94 is pretty much that exact same story. Because during the game you go to the Mushroom Kingdom and you find the magic mushrooms, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it's all about how Mario started in Brooklyn and then ended up in a crazy fantasy land and became a hero. But before that, he was this working class hero, like just a blue collar laborer guy who had all these different jobs.
Don't forget Vietnam War vet.
Exactly. And that's another topic I actually want to get to on the podcast at some point later, is Mario's various jobs.
Yeah.
But that's another hashtag teaser for you. Yeah, let's move on to the next thing, shall we?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. So the next item that I had was just a minor one. There were a series of trading card / stickers that Topps put out.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. And
I was talking about those a little earlier with the lanky Waluigi-esque Mario.
Yes, that's where you can see that version of Mario. And there's one particular shot where his hat is flying off his head, and you can see like a great bald pate there.
You can see that a lot in the activity books we were just talking about as well.
Oh yeah, true enough.
Like that's sort of the depiction Mario had around this era.
Yeah, one of the several sort of through lines of official art from that time. Yeah. Yeah. So some of the stickers show kind of a little scene or have a speech bubble on them, and that's why I sort of have them as a comic adjacent medium. So
some of them have great little slogans. I like the honk if you donk with DK on the car.
Yes. I'm just looking. I forgot to look at the upper list, but yeah, there's one where Mario's hanging off a ladder saying, "Take it one step at a time," or there's a Donkey Kong Jr. series as well. One where Mario's got DK in a cage and he's brandishing the key, and Donkey Kong is saying, "Let me out of here." There's one where DK's saying, "Hop to it." Pauline's saying, "Jump, man, jump."
Jump, man. Get it? Jump, man. She said
Get
the
it?
thing. Ah.
Yay. And then, the really good one is Donkey Kong with a bowl full of coins and a spoon, and he's saying, "I eat quarters."
Oh man. As a
Very
minor
meta joke
segue
there.
to this sort of comics ancillary topics from the early 1980s, I just want to mention really briefly the Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. serials.
Oh yeah.
Because one, they had some absurd commercials. Two, you could get these stickers through promotions on the cereal boxes. And three, Donkey Kong Jr.'s best design, hands down, is from his cereal box.
I agree.
He's not in the circus leotard anymore. He's in, what would you even call this outfit? It's not just like shorts and a shirt, but it's sort of a jersey-ish.
Yeah, I remember it as him wearing a jacket, but it's not. It's
No, it's a jersey. Here,
it's less of a leotard and more of a
picture up real quick.
But
No,
he's sort of got short sleeves and
yeah, it reminds me of like a basketball jersey type setup, except
Sure.
it's a onesie. So
yeah, it is a onesie sort of. It's a bit hard to tell what's going on with his legs,
but it's
'cause he's
way
in a
better than the
pose.
leotard. So
And I
again,
like
we'll
his
actually have
face and
pictures
his
on this
fur and
podcast,
stuff is
so.
really cool too.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I ever manage to get a job working on one of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games and can bring Junior back, I'm gonna see if I can get him in this outfit. Just as
Fingers crossed.
modern Junior. But yeah, so that was my ancillary note for comics adjacent material.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the next thing I had was Captain N.
Oh, Captain N.
Did you ever watch the show?
Did I?
Did you?
Yes, I watched
Okay.
Captain N. Captain N was actually where I first learned of Metroid and fell in love with Mother Brain. So, which,
Well.
and of course, my love of Metroid. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this podcast, but my love of Metroid in particular and how it's put together was why I got into video game development in the first place.
That's
So
so cool. That's
yeah,
fascinating.
so we can directly blame that on Captain N comics.
Well, I mean, you would be kind of jarred by the depiction of Mother Brain compared to the games.
I mean, you say that, but I don't remember being jarred by the depiction. One, because I don't think I ever got to Mother Brain in the game as a kid. I wasn't that good. But two, just like I said on the Super Jump podcast episode we were on about the Mario Bros movie, I did not have a sense of separating things out into subcategories of continuity. Everything was a whole to me. So Captain N was just part of the story of these video games, as far as I was concerned.
And I don't think Mother Brain really had a character until the manga that was tying into Zero Mission.
Yeah.
And still not in the game itself. So the only game thing would really be Other M, I would say.
Yeah. And interestingly, Other M was also sort of prefigured by Captain N, in that one of the comics features them delving into Mother Brain's mind, because she's being attacked by a virus, and she appears in humanoid form, in human form in her mind.
Yeah. The comic was cool. Anyway, that's what we're talking about. Just to set the stage first, Captain N was a cartoon show by Deke. Deke. It had 20-something episodes. I didn't write that down.
It had 3 seasons. So.
Oh, I did write it down, actually. It's 34 episodes. And 3 seasons between 89 and 91. And the premise of the show was that Kevin Keane, normal audience surrogate kid, boy, of course.
I don't know. No? I have a slight problem with his depiction, because you'd think the target audience for this would be sort of nerds, right? But Kevin Keane is a total jock. He's wearing the varsity jacket. He's the cool kid. Yeah. But other than that,
he's too cool. Yeah. Well, he's really into video games, though.
He is really into video games.
So he gets sucked into the game. This is another, like we were talking about before, it's that kind of Tron thing. You're going into the game and then you're interacting with the characters in it. And he meets a whole cast of characters from different video games that were popular at the time, especially Nintendo ones. And
but
that includes first-party
Mario.
ones, but also other ones that were just on the system, on the platform.
This actually reminds me a lot of the original incarnation of the Justice League, which did not feature Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman. It was a team for the rest of them. And
I like that.
Similarly, because like Mario and sort of Zelda later had their own shows, this was the show that everybody else appeared on. Yeah,
and I think if Mario didn't have his own show, he would have appeared in this, but because he had his own thing. They actually did have a crossover with the Zelda show at one point, and Link and Zelda show up, and they actually sort of depicted with a different design than they were in the show, kind of implying that it's set after the show.
Yeah.
And whereas on the flip side, I think what the comic implies is that the Captain N sort of story is set before Metroid the game, I would say. But anyway,
yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the reason we're talking about it is there was a comic and Donkey Kong is involved. The comic itself was pretty interesting because it kind of skewed a little bit. I don't know, telling deeper kind of stories or a little bit darker, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Than the show. It was put out by Valiant Comics at the time when they were doing a bunch of other Nintendo comics as well. They had their Mario comic, they had their Zelda comic. They also had like short Punch Out and Metroid spin-off.
Man, their Zelda comic was something else.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was this sort of line of Nintendo comics that they had, and then they had these sort of compilation books that were called Nintendo Comic System, which tied into Nintendo Entertainment System and Nintendo Magazine System, which was at one point the name of a publication. But
oh, is this the same one that had the Super Mario Land comics with Tatanga as the recurring main
That's
villain?
Right. So
yeah,
they did have a comic series called Game Boy that was the opposite premise to Captain N. It had the villain Tatanga from Super Mario Land exiting a Game Boy into the real world, except he was really tiny. And then Mario came out to stop him. And there were, I think, 4 or 5 issues of that were quite strange as well. But anyway, there were 5 issues of a Captain N comic in 1990, as well as a couple of additional stories that were only in those compilation volumes.
Yeah, I actually have one of those issues somewhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I have
Well,
no idea
scans
where
of them
it
are all
is.
online.
It might be in the giant long box with all my original Sonic comics.
Ooh. So that's the comic, that's the cartoon. So what is the role of Donkey Kong in this? We mentioned that Mario has no appearance in there. We don't see Pauline or Stanley or anybody.
So the
but
basic
DK
setup
is there.
of the thing is you have the various heroes and various villains, and they're not all one-to-one. Like in the show, Mother Brain was the
I didn't
big
explain how
boss of all of the Nintendo villains. So at one point,
Yes.
Mother Brain was the ruler of the roost and ruled all the Nintendo villains, and Master Hand is obviously just her disembodied hand. Despite this, so while you had very oddly drawn Kraid and Ridley in there, like Samus wasn't in the show at all,
No.
which was a departure in the comics. Samus was one of the regular supporting cast members, and that's because there were different licensing rights for the show versus the comic version of things.
Yeah, that's right. The hero team in the show is made up of Kevin and Lana, who is an original character. But
Lana.
She takes like this Peach Zelda kind of princess role, but she's an original character. They were supported by Simon Belmont, who is
he's a gay oaf. And I can say that.
I was going to say Goof, which is almost the same thing.
Yeah, sure. That's a portmanteau if
but-
I ever heard one. He's very like, oh man, hi, I'm Simon Belmont. I'm big and strong and a little dumb. And Kid Icarus who says
Yes.
at the end of everything.
Yes.
Not Pit, Kid Icarus.
And he's
Mega
like a little
Man,
guy.
who's this tiny little green dude who talks like he's been smoking 6 packs a day for years.
He also has a stupid vocal tick, doesn't he?
Yeah, he talks like this.
He says mega a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. Dr.
he's
Light
green.
is also tiny.
And
there was
I
Mega
heard
Girl in one
speculation
episode.
that whoever was the character designer for this show was possibly colorblind or just had a bad TV, because particularly with regards to the episode where all the robot masters from the Mega Man games show up and they all look completely ridiculous, and the colors are way off. But yeah, Mega Man's green, and Wily is this little gnome dwarf thing. It's quite strange.
The show is a trip, and I love it, and it is my childhood.
But yeah, so you had Kevin, Lana, Simon, Kid Icarus, and Mega Man, as well as Kevin's dog. What was the dog's name?
Oh god, I can't remember.
Doesn't matter. Anyway, they also had a Game Boy, a sentient Game Boy, which was the size of a man and flew around and had a face on the screen.
Oh god, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was introduced in Series 2.
Duke
so
is
that was
the dog.
Duke is the dog, thank you. So that was the hero team. The villain team, Mother Brain is
Mother
the
Brain,
chief of
King
that. And
Hippo.
can I just say about the depiction of Mother Brain is she's this completely cheesy, over-the-top, like scenery-chewing, campy villain.
She's Cassandra from Doctor Who, The End of the World.
Yeah, she's inside this big liquid tank and is a face that's just been stretched. So yeah, she's Cassandra.
Face that's stretched. The brain is still there in the tank, but the part that's
Yeah.
talking is this stretched out face.
It's really strange.
It's really fucking creepy. I'm not sure why this didn't give me nightmares as a child.
So the main villains are the Eggplant Wizard from Kid Icarus.
Yeah.
And
Not Medusa, the eggplant wizard.
No. Yeah.
Because they knew the real villain every kid was going to have a problem with.
Like you said, a kid might never get to the end of the game and see Mother Brain in the game, but they would get far enough to see the Eggplant Wizard. And likewise, Punch-Out had a representative on the villain team through King Hippo. Not Mike Tyson, which would be something else.
I know, right? Man, now I want an episode of Mike Tyson's Mysteries where he meets up with Little Mac.
What?
Oh, Mike Tyson has a current contemporary sort of cartoon show that is in the vein of but makes fun of like Scooby-Doo and those types of
Oh.
old shows where you've got like the gang that goes around and solves mysteries, and it's Mike Tyson played by himself, this little talking pigeon that like snorts coke and does drugs and stuff. Mike
Okay.
Tyson's, I don't know what Penny is supposed to be, like his niece or something. I don't know. But they go around solving these mysteries, except the mysteries are either really dumb or just really fucking out there. Like, there's this one episode that I remember very vividly, and it starts out with this, like, guy hiring them to, like, confirm whether his wife is cheating on him or not. And it turns out that she's a member of some alien sex dungeon club, and there's this fight with the alien queen, and everything explodes, and there's gore everywhere by the end of the episode. It was weird.
Okay.
But yeah, I want an episode of Mike Tyson's Mysteries where Little Max shows up.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. Mike Tyson's a
Okay.
weird guy. Anyway,
Well, yes. Um,
so King Hippo.
King Hippo is there, and he's a strange monster man, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they're the main two villain lackeys, and like they're quite stupid and they are bumbling. But their ranks are sort of supplemented by other villains. Like I said, Dr. Wily shows up, and
Yeah, and like
you
Kraid
see a
and
lot of
Ridley
other
show up at
ones.
times
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
And
off.
among those other villains that show up at times is Donkey Kong.
of course,
voiced
because
by
he takes
Gary
the antagonist role in the famous game Donkey Kong. And yeah, as Gibbon said, he's voiced by Gary Chalk, and he does kind of talk.
Lots of people are voiced by Gary Chalk in this.
Well, yeah. The one I noted down specifically was that he plays Optimus Primal in the Beast Wars show. So
yeah,
there's
actually,
your,
that's
there's your
an
gorilla
interesting
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So DK is sometimes depicted as a villain, but he's usually depicted as a sort of neutral kind of force of nature type of character, and he's really huge. He's basically King Kong size in the show.
Yeah.
At one point, when in the episode where he's introduced, Kevin's like jumping between all these different worlds, and they exit through the shower head while DK is taking a shower. So they're coming out the tiny holes in his shower and falling down into his bathtub. And that's how big he is, and he chases them and stuff. But yeah, depending on the episode, he's sometimes sort of placed with the villains, like in the episode Video Olympics, where there's a hero team and a villain team doing sporting events.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the main episodes that he's part of are Simon the Ape Man, where Simon loses his memory and becomes a Tarzan, and like they hang out in Congo Land, which is the zone that Donkey Kong lives in, because all the different video games have their little
Video
zone
games.
lands. In Video Land, every game is in these separate zones that you access through warp zones, and so
Except the
Kong
other
is in
zones
Congo
are
Land.
Metroid and Castlevania and just named
Yeah.
after the video games, and yet
Yeah.
Donkey Kong lives in Congo Land. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And there's an episode in the second season which has a Donkey Kong focus called The Lost City of Congo Land.
Wait, I'm reading about some of these other supporting characters, and there's Prince Plenty, the monarch of Congo Land.
Oh, interesting. So
Prince Plenty is
like, we
blue-skinned,
haven't
like all
recently
humanoid
watched the whole
inhabitants of
show.
Congo Land. What?
Okay, that's
okay.
odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the research on the comic. Like like I said, there's 34 episodes of the show. I haven't watched them. We'll probably do an episode on the show at some point. At which point we'll be better informed on it. But
Yeah.
I
Oh my
skimmed
god,
through
I
it a
just
bit and
looked up a
noticed
picture
that-
of this guy,
Yeah.
and it's very apparent that he's blue-skinned because they didn't want to outright show black people.
So it's a Mr. Popo in certain censored dubs of Dragon Ball kind of thing.
Not that bad. Not nearly that
Okay.
bad, but this is, blue skin, green hair, wearing sort of tribal outfits and living in huts sort of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Anyway, I noticed
Yeah.
Donkey Kong wearing some pretty interesting outfits.
Yeah, they're
throughout
great.
Various episodes of the show. At one point, he dons an army helmet and dog tags and a camo like singlet. At one point, he puts on a fedora and a tie, and this is predating Donkey Kong's depiction as wearing a tie that says DK. So it's a blue tie with a picture of a banana on it.
Yes, I like it.
And then in a later episode, he shows up looking kind of like a farmer with a straw hat and overalls. So I'm looking forward to getting to that at some point.
Yeah,
but
it's a fun show.
It's a silly show with a lot of interesting stuff in it. But just in terms of the comic itself, which was a tie-in to the show, let's talk about Donkey Kong's depiction in that, because it's actually a lot less significant than in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when I tried to total it up, he only has basically cameo appearances in 3 shorts and 1 story. So shorts would be like something that's just 1 page long or 2 pages long that is an interstitial segment. He only really appears in 1 story, and that story is... which one of these is a story?
There's the Welcome to Videoland intro.
Yeah, that's a short.
Town.
I think that's a short.
Secrets of the Warp Zones.
I think that's a short. Actually,
All's Well That Ends Swell? Villain
Possibly.
Group Shot Only. It sounds like Secrets of the Warp Zones, maybe?
No. Okay, I've got it now. All's Well That Ends Swell is the final comic of the run, I believe. And it was printed... It was printed in one of those compilation things, so I guess the main line got cancelled, and they sort of finished it there. Maybe. Sorry, I didn't specifically look into this, but
he shows up occasionally, not in any significant role.
Yeah, he's just he is depicted more as a villain, I would say, in this, because they have these sort of group villain shots where the League of Darkness is like meeting, and Mother Brain is telling them what to do, and part of that is it's like the main villain, or one of the villains from Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, the Game Boy sequel, is part of the League of Darkness in the comic, but he's not really in the show.
Yeah. Like I was saying, the casts are a little different between the show and the comic.
Yeah, you mentioned that, like, they couldn't get all the rights for the comic, so they had to cut Simon Belmont and Mega Man, who are owned by Konami and Capcom, and they sort of replaced them by putting in Samus as a regular character, which
and she's
sets
sort
up
of
some interesting
a
team
love
dynamics.
interest rival to Lana. Yeah, it's weird.
It is weird. And they do go some interesting places with it. But yeah, Donkey Kong really doesn't have much presence in the comic as part of any stories.
But he's there, so we're talking about it.
Yeah, he's there. One thing, just like the one like factoid that I would pull out of it, is that he has an automatic banana peeler, and at one point he thinks Kevin stole it and is chasing him, and that's the opening 2 panels for one of the shorts, and then it turns out that like one of the villains from that Kid Icarus game stole it, and it's kind of a weird looking device. I don't know how that would exactly peel a banana, but just like, is it necessary to have a device that peels bananas for you? They're really easy to peel.
They are really easy to peel. Now I'm looking at automatic banana peelers on Google. Some of these are weird. But anyway.
Kitchen gadgets, it's a really crazy world of things that really don't have any need to exist.
Yeah. Anyway,
that was it for Captain N, I guess, because DK doesn't have a whole lot of stuff to do there. But yeah, we talked about it, I guess.
Yep, that we did.
Now, the next one is probably more prominent, but I put it lower in the list because it wasn't released in English.
Yeah.
It's a series of comics that I'm well acquainted with. There was an official magazine for Nintendo in Germany called Club Nintendo. Germany got all the good stuff in terms of European Nintendo branches, because the main headquarters of Nintendo of Europe was in Germany. So their comic is, their magazine is really cool. It has a lot of comics in it.
I think it has the best of all the Western comics, honestly, just for any given series.
Okay, that's interesting. So comparing to Nintendo powers like Star Fox and Metroid comics.
I mean, those
Super
are
Mario
okay,
Adventures.
but it's very apparent that Club Nintendo just had way more fun with things.
I agree. It seemed they had a lot of latitude to really go silly and crazy with their stuff.
Like a while back, we were going over the one where Mario time travels, and that was just off the wall.
Yeah, the art in that is really inconsistent and strange, but
and then there's
has a lot of weird
Kirby.
cameos. Oh well, the Kirby's quite notable because he's been reinterpreted as a hard-boiled detective in this sort of noirish setting, and he smokes
and drinks and curses.
And
hits on dames, and Dedetta is his bumbling sidekick. And
it's really quite.
It's fucking
odd.
great.
Oh, and he does have a wife, and he kind of doesn't seem to be that faithful because he's always going after these dames. But the story is that Claude Moisey, who was the chief editor for the magazine for a while and worked on game localizations into German, he kind of had a beef with Sakurai, and as a deliberate act of like sabotage of Kirby, he depicted him in this really strange and inauthentic way.
That's great. I love it.
Anyway, the reason I'm so acquainted with these comics is because I've done a lot of work on translating them from German into English, as has the comic translation group Open Train, which you can find at opentrain.theyear1990x.org. I recommend their site because they've done a lot of weird foreign comics into English, including the Brazilian Mega Man comic, but that's another story. What I want to bring up about Club Nintendo in relation to DK Goda is just 4 comics that feature DK in some way. Later on, they did actually do adaptations of Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country 2. But before that, they had a few. Like Mario is mostly the main character of a lot of these comics. They do diverge into other things like a Zelda one, a Wave Race one, the Kirby one. But they also have crossover ones where Mario, Kirby, and Link team up to take on horror movie monsters, or Yoshi teams up with the Blast Corps team. But anyway.
Yeah, okay.
It's weird. So as far as DK goes, the first relevant one would be Plum Wando, Muscles Are Not Everything, or in the original, Klemp Wando, Muskeln sind nicht alles. My German might be off. I'm no good at it, but this comic was printed. Thank you. The magazine was published bi-monthly, so there were 6 issues in a year, and this was in the September-October of 1992 issue. So this comic, actually, let me pull it up because it's pretty cool. So it's 4 pages long, and it's a crossover between Mario and Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mario sees a sign for a tournament, and says, "Oh, I can do that," and he starts training to take on the Street Fighter 2 fighters. When he sees them on the night, when he sees them on a night, he suddenly thinks, these guys look tough. Maybe I don't want to do this after all. So he tries to chicken out, but as he turns around, he bumps into Donkey Kong, a la the arcade games, because this is pre-DKC. And Donkey Kong is wearing a full suit with a red tie, I will note, and dark sunglasses, and he sort of threatens Mario or coerces him into participating in the tournament. As he says, we still have a score to settle with each other. You're not going anywhere. So he kind of wants Mario to be taken out by these Street Fighters, I think. But Mario does manage to win. He fights Zangief, Chun-Li, Blanca, and Dalsim. And using a variety of unconventional techniques, he manages to defeat them all and win the tournament. So, yeah. That's the kind of thing we've got going on here. But the next appearance of DK still features him with the same interpretation with the suit on.
Interesting.
Yes. So the next one is Cool Tones or Cool Sounds, Cooler Klange. This was in the March-April 1993 issue, and it was also reprinted in the January-February 97 issue when I guess they were running behind deadlines on whatever comic they were working on then. But let's see. So the plot of this one is that Mario, out of nowhere, decides that he's really good at singing or rapping. And
I wonder if this is when he got that tribal tattoo that he got covered up later.
Sure. The famous, Game Boy Advance tie-in where you see his upper arm and he's got a tattoo. I think it was before the era of tribal tattoos, actually, because 93 might have been too early for that. So he's the enthusiastic Mario that we saw in the Street Fighter one. He decides he wants to do something and he just rushes off and does it. He runs along to Cooper Records, the record company, which is run by Max Milliplatt, who's just an original character whose name is like a pun, I guess. So let's see what happens. There's a bunch of other famous cameo celebrities in the office there already, like Prince and Michael Jackson. And Max Milliplatt decides he wants to change Mario's image to make him a successful music star. So they try on a bunch of different costumes. He puts on an Elvis costume, and then he puts on lederhosen, and then he tries on like a Michael Jackson Beat It kind of outfit, and says, "Yes, that's the one. You go and sing in the club like that." So the next scene is him singing. And in the crowd who were just in this bar is Donkey Kong wearing the same suit and smoking a big fat cigar.
Okay then.
Yeah. And
Cranky likes a doobie.
Well, I don't know what it is exactly, but
that's fair.
He's there with another guy in a suit and dark glasses. I don't know what kind of shady business they're getting up to, but they're very obviously drinking some kind of spirit. And Mario is booed off the stage. So there's a panel where 4 items are being thrown at Mario. Well, one is a Koopa shell, one is a hot dog, there's a glass and an ashtray. So I'm going to say DK threw the ashtray at him. And Mario goes back to the studio, and they go, "Oh, let's change your image again." They try out a punk and like a hip hop thing and a hippie kind of outfit. And Mario goes, "This sucks. I quit." And then is just singing for his friends in an abandoned. It's weird. There's like a club, but the windows are all boarded up, and the only ones there are Mario and Luigi and Peach and Toad. I don't know. Yeah. Mario gives up is my note on that. So the next comic, that's 2 down, 2 to go. Mario in Wonderland.
Oh, man.
May, June of 93. Reprinted November, December 97. So this depicts Mario doing his work as a plumber, which is one of those rare things.
Oh, man.
That it has in common with the movie. So the comic is called Super Mario in Wonderland, but it's really more of a Wizard of Oz ripoff, because when he gets to this flooded apartment, he swims down because there's so much flooding that it's completely filled up. He swims down to the broken pipe and gets sucked into and ends up in this strange world that he doesn't recognize. And he's wearing a gingham dress, and has his hair in pigtails. Let's see what happens. So Wispy Woods is there from Kirby, tells him to find the wizard, and he goes along and gathers companions just like Dorothy. So he meets Toad and then Kirby and Yoshi, who all have their own, needs. Toad wants to be taller, Kirby wants a new look, and Yoshi is tired of being green and wants a new color.
Okay.
And then they're immediately ambushed by 3 villains, and the villains are Wario, Bowser, and Donkey Kong in the arcade appearance. He doesn't really say anything, but Wario thinks that the heroes stole their cookies and says, there they are, let them have it. But they are saved by Fox, who blasts in from outer space.
Okay,
so yeah,
then.
DK just in cameo villain mode.
Yeah.
They do get to the wizard, who is probably some kind of reference to a German TV show or something. I don't understand, or maybe I don't know, someone in The Office. Anyway, he does actually have magic powers and fulfills their request. Toad grows into a huge giant toad. Kirby changes into a toaster, and Yoshi becomes black instead of green, which does actually come up again in a later comic where they actually reprint part of this to explain why a Yoshi there is black. It's a Yoshi story era comic, so it's like a baby Yoshi, so it doesn't actually make sense because he's, if you are to believe that it is the same character, then he's also regressed in age. But yeah, there is some strange continuity elements between some of these comics.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So the last one that features Donkey Kong in this capacity is one called Erholung, Nein Danke, which means recreation or rest, no thanks, from August of 93. So in this one, Mario, Peach, Yoshi, and Luigi are going on a holiday, a very cheap holiday, and they're flying the dilapidated Coupe Air. DK is the baggage handler in this scenario.
Okay.
He grabs their suitcases and just chucks them with little regard for damaging them at all. And he says, all the stuff people are dragging around with them, away with it. So, yeah, all these comics, I didn't translate any of these comics myself. I did some later ones. These are all done by Open Train, so again, check out their website. And basically the premise of this is that everything on their holiday is being run by Bowser, and it's all terrible. The Koopalings are running various things in the plane and at the hotel when they get there. Wario is driving their crappy bus to get to the hotel. DK does actually have another line. He leads the pilot to the plane, and the pilot is like basically clinically blind. He's got these huge glasses on and he can't see anything. And Donkey Kong's telling him, no, Captain Sir, this is not the new shopping mall. This is the machine you're about to fly.
Oh, dear.
Yes. So they have an awful time and everything goes wrong. And they end up going home and deciding to have a holiday just on the balcony of their apartment, which sometimes in the continuity of these comics, Mario lives in an apartment in Brooklyn. That's what you need to know.
Didn't he live in a house for that time traveling one? Yeah, whatever.
Yes. It changes, but
okay.
For the purposes of this comic, they're in a city and they're just sitting on their balcony.
Alrighty then.
Yep. So that's the end of Club Nintendo. And that was a lot of me talking.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Milo's more the expert in this field than I am, so he's done a lot more talking this episode. I will try to contribute more as we go.
No, that's fine. Just saying I need a drink now.
Oh, yeah.
So the next topic is to do with the Super Mario Brothers the movie, which we mentioned earlier. So I guess what you need to know about this is there's a website called smbmovie.com, the Super Mario Brothers archive, or Super Mario Brothers the movie archive. Anyway, it's run by these two guys, Jason Haas and Stephen Applebaum, who are super fans, and they know a lot about the movie. They own a lot of merchandise from the movie, including props and things.
They just recently got the Yoshi head.
That's right, the prop that was used for the puppet, or possibly an early iteration of it. But they're also heavily involved with projects to keep the legacy of the movie alive, including home releases of the movie. They're working on a Blu-ray right now to be released in North America. They're working on a musical version to go on Broadway or whatever. And screenings of the movie and things like that. They're all involved in stuff like that. And one of the projects that they had going on was a comic that acted as a sequel to the movie. And there is some sense of legitimacy to this in that they were basing the overall plot on an outline that was contributed by one of the writers of the film. So the film had many different writers over its life, people contributing versions of the script and then revising it, and et cetera, et cetera. But one of the key people involved in the script as it happened in the movie, they got in touch with him and created this comic out of it. So unfortunately, the comic itself only got about half finished, and then it kind of stopped and has been sort of silent for a few years. But we did get some good news quite recently that the archive guys, Stephen and Ryan, sorry I said Jason before, but it's Ryan Haas, intend to continue and complete the comic this year. So we're all looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But the comic as it exists now is of relevance to us because of the reasons that the movie is.
So just the general sort of prequel-y nature, but also the presence of Daniela Pauline.
I mean, I guess by this point it's moved beyond the prequel because
this sequel comic does kind of veer into adapting Super Mario Bros. 2 / Super Mario Bros. USA.
Right, that's the premise of it, is as the first movie kind of adapted elements from the first game. And when I say adapted, like, they really made it their own, which I think is one of the strengths of the movie. But they're reinterpreting stuff from Mario USA here, like Shy Guys and Wart and things like that, while also being a sequel to the events of the film. Pauline's in it, Daniela I should say, but she doesn't have any lines. I skimmed through it, and she's she does accompany them into the Mushroom World when they go back with Daisy, but she's pretty much just seen just hanging out with them in various scenes, and doesn't really do or say much, but that's okay.
You'll notice this is a recurring theme in a lot of these comics that are centered more on Mario, is that DK or Pauline or whoever might be present, they don't do a whole lot. Guess that brings us to our next item, which isn't exactly a comic.
This is in the etc. portion of the
this
publications.
Is Doors to Doom, which is the 6th publication of the Nintendo Adventure Book series. And what do I have written down here? Nintendo Adventure Books is a series of game books that primarily based on Mario, but there's some Legend of Zelda ones published around like early 90s, 91, 92. And they were sort of in the vein of the old Choose Your Own Adventure, Decide Your Destiny books, but they also had like points and scoring systems for like having Mario pick up coins and having like getting items and points and stuff.
Oh, so like Finding Fantasy?
Yeah, kind of like that. So, and then you'd tally up your score at the end and keep track of how many points you got. So it's the 6th book. Breaks the fourth wall a little bit. It's the first one to directly award points in addition to like having Mario pick up coins and stuff. The basic premise is that Dr. Sporus von Fungenstein, evil mad scientist Koopa, not Koopa, Goomba mad
Goomba.
scientist,
Okay.
has built this device that creates doors that connects many worlds together and is planning to take over the world, and has done away with everyone who might be able to stop him except for Mario and Luigi. They're the only ones left. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's pretty capable of him.
pretty capable. So as it happens, none of that is true. Fungenstein works for the Royal Academy of Mushroom Science, and this was all just a setup to show how heroic Mario and Luigi were before awarding them various medals and stuff.
Oh. I think that's called entrapment.
Entrapment of heroics.
Yeah, but like positive entrapment.
Yeah, this happens a lot in the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games where Pauline's like, hey, I need Mario to be distracted for a while. Donkey Kong, go just like walk in front of him or something.
And then
but anyway,
she was planning a party or something.
yeah. This happens in a lot, pretty much every Mario vs. Donkey Kong game after 2. Because in Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, Donkey Kong legitimately grabs Pauline and runs off, but it all gets resolved peaceably. But every game after that, it's like, oh, Donkey Kong and Pauline are actually working and testing the toys. Mario just assumed the worst and wrecked everything. Or, like, Pauline's setting up a surprise party for Mario and needs him out of the way. She tells Donkey Kong to go keep him occupied. Mario assumes the worst. This is a running theme.
Mario is a true villain.
Mario is a true villain. But anyway, speaking of Donkey Kong and why we are interested in the Doors to Doom, is one of the worlds that Fungenstein sends the Mario Brothers through is Donkey Kong's Jungle with Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. So
yeah, because I saw in the summary it said that Mario and Luigi must survive the attack of wicked Shy Guys, Ninjas, Wart, and the incorrigible Kong family. So it's kind of a retrospective of like all the Mario games that had been up to that point, and I was wondering who the family was, but yeah, it's just those two, I guess.
I haven't actually seen this book because, like almost everything else we've talked about today, it's hard to track down and expensive. But Mario Wiki specifically lists Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. as making appearances.
Is that where you got all this summary from?
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, does it have illustrations?
Those
kind of books often did.
That's true. I have the game book thing for... Oh god, I've suddenly forgotten the English name of this not Castlevania game, or the Japanese name of this not Castlevania game, because I just call it Demon's Castle a lot, but it's the one about Getsu Fumiden. I've got the sort of game choose your own adventure game book for Getsu Fumiden, but it's all in Japanese, but it does have illustrations every once in a while. And I know the Metroid one has illustrations as well, and they're pretty great.
Yeah.
But again, that's the Japanese ones.
Yeah.
So
the Zelda ones do as well. Some really, really like gnarly fantasy art work in there. It's really cool.
There's that Castlevania one that has like Simon Belmont, the modern Simon Belmont, descendant of Simon Belmont, who's starring in a film adaptation of his ancestors' legacy.
Yes. So that's the fun thing about a lot of these game books is they're not adaptations. They do tell new stories. Just like this one. But I guess the fact that it was all a virtual reality simulation means that the Kongs don't actually really appear.
Oh, no. He actually set up these doors connecting to other worlds. He just wasn't out to take over the world and had gotten rid of everybody else. It was just a setup to show how heroic the brothers were.
Oh, that's... really strange.
Yeah. As Mario Wiki summarizes, every few years, the Royal Academy of Mushroom Science gives out an award for outstanding heroism, bravery, ingenuity, moral character, and overall good looks. And Fungenstein had engineered the adventure to test the Mario Brothers' worthiness to receive it. This You know what? This sounds like a Mario and Luigi RPG plot.
Yeah, I was going to say that the Goomba scientist reminds me of Professor Frankly from Thousand Year Door.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, okay. The other thing that popped out at me from this description was that the setup is that Mario and Luigi are in their Brooklyn plumbing shop. And a strange door suddenly appears. So it's this premise that the movie takes, and that the Super Mario Brothers Super Show takes, that they're living and working in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they have adventures in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Oh, and this predates the movie by like a year. So.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just the status quo at the time.
Yeah.
Although, so the live action sections of the Super Show, are they set before they ever encountered the Mushroom Kingdom?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so they do go back and forth.
Yeah.
In that kind of era and that scenario.
That was the common premise. Like, it's in the opening of the show of them getting, like, going through the pipes into the Mushroom Kingdom. And getting
on the brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like this.
And that's the end.
Yep.
There's the rap at the start.
That show was great.
Coopers and Troopers. Dubba, dubba, dubba. I forget.
You'll be hooked on the brothers.
Dun, dun.
Well, excuse me, princess. Oh, old media's great. Horrible, but great.
Yeah, and I wish we had a scan of this book. I had a look.
I wish we had scans of
anyway.
all of these books. I'd love to track down physical copies of a lot of these.
Yeah, we could make it happen. Go to eBay, get the books, scan them in.
Yeah. I've been doing that with some manga I like that's hard to get a hold of. Unfortunately, one of my sellers recently canceled one of my big orders because they're like, we don't actually have a bunch of that stuff. Sorry, we made a mistake. I got my money back, so that's nice, but it's a little disappointing. I would have liked the books.
Agreed. So I guess that's it. I think we've covered a lot of stuff here today.
We did cover a lot of stuff here today.
A lot of comics and things that are sort of about Donkey Kong stuff, but I think the main ones were the Blip comic and the coloring books at the start. They really add a lot to
the early
the context.
Lore.
Early lore where it was a Wild West and things weren't nailed down, and you could just do whatever you wanted.
So you think DK ended up in this zoo/circus place after the experiments got did he get he obviously wasn't a success, so do you think they were just sell him to a zoo? Because his brother Julius Kong is in a zoo.
That's true, he's in a zoo, but I think the sort of park that DK was in that context was a sort of zoo/park,
zoo/park
etc. And because there were other animals that it talks about Pauline going and feeding.
Yeah, there were other animals, but there were also rides, and there was,
So I like to think it all happened in this one place. Mario was working there, Pauline was working there. They were part-time zookeepers sometimes, and
reminds me of a street fair I went to as a very young child, where there was food stands everywhere, and there was a Ferris wheel and rides and stuff, and I got to ride around on an elephant for a while. And they wouldn't do that anymore. No, that's illegal. You can't do that anymore. But when I was a kid, it was just magical.
If I could get a through line through some of these comics we covered, a lot of them have DK in a villainous role. And he definitely had that phase in his life, especially when he's kind of depicted as a gangster in a suit in the German comics.
Yeah.
So he kind of
Cranky's got a
flip-flops
snappy
between
dress sense.
sympathetic and antagonistic, because straight up in Junior he's been captured. So I don't know if he became sympathetic and everything else is fitting in that one little time zone, or if he flip-flops back to being a villain later on and has that role for a longer period of time.
I think it works best, as we said in the beginning. He's not a villain. He's just an asshole.
Well said. All right, so that's a good place to end off. So, are there any plugs that you want to do for your own work?
Oh, plugs
anything?
for my own work.
Or just, your social media or something.
Well, as always, I am Gibbon on Twitter. No punctuation there, and the site is dkgirder.com, and there's links to the forums, which is dkgirder.freeforums.net. I sometimes stream on Twitch at Zakuroi no Gibbon. Recent name change. And
I tried to change my name on Twitch and it wouldn't let me.
It wouldn't. You used to have to get permission to, but now you can change it once every 6 months. Yeah. That's a semi-recent thing.
Okay.
So, that's my social media handles. Milo can be found on the internet at...
Yes, I am Milo Scat on Twitter and Tumblr. And I stream weekly on miloscatter.twitch.tv. Is that it? No, twitch.tv/...
Twitch.tv/miloscatter.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I play semi-obscure retro games, new one every week, new to me, new to you, possibly. And on my Tumblr, I draw pixel art, I review every game I play, and I also translate video game comics, as I mentioned earlier, like the Club Nintendo ones. My most recent project that I'm pretty happy with is the Sonic comic, which was a series of 26 web comics that were published online for Sonic the Hedgehog's 25th anniversary, and each one focuses on a different character. They have this nice art style that's monochromatic but with a single key color, and
nice.
They're full of fun little gags, and I spend a lot of time working on it, so please check it out.
I guess also, now that I remember Tumblr's a thing, on Tumblr I'm the real Gibbon .tumblr. And I've also been doing some comic scans on Tumblr. I mentioned Tsutomu Nihei and Blame earlier. There's a lot of little one-shots and special fan booklets where other mangaka will do sort of tribute comics that have been put out over the last couple years as Nihei's made sort of a resurgence in popularity with Knights of Sidonia. And I've been hunting down those and scanning them and helping in the translation effort for the general Nihei fan community, and I post that stuff on Tumblr. So,
and the last one you scanned got fully translated, didn't it?
Yes, the last one I scanned got fully translated. It was Fort of Silicon Creatures and was a bonus comic that came with the special edition Blu-ray of the Blame movie in Japan only. And this is not to be confused with the special tie-in chapter of Knights of Sidonia that featured the characters watching the Blame movie. This is, this is a special bonus just chapter of Blame. It fits in between the final 2 issues of the original run of Blame, where there's a big time skip, and has Killy and Sibo coming across a Silicon Creature city. And yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it. Thanks for joining us on the Arcade Era Power Hour. And
we're trying to see you next time, which is hopefully soon. We're trying to record these more regularly. We didn't record one last week because we were participating in the Great Ape Relay for DK Vine.
Don't try to promise every week.
I'm not going to promise every week. I'm just saying we're trying to record more regularly. So...
regularly or semi-regularly.
Yeah. Like, better than once every 4 years. Let's put it that way. We're already going on a... Well, we're doing better than that already.
Yeah.
So.
And I dropped a few hashtag teasers about upcoming episodes.
Yeah.
So we got plans.
Anyway, yeah.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.